it's Sam, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing some products by Arteza. This video is not sponsored, but they did send me these art supplies for free. I'll be going over their sketchbook as well as their colored pencil set. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so before we touch on the colored pencils, I just want to hit the sketchbook first. Kind of going with first impressions and then playing around a bit with the paper. So first thing I noticed is that it's a hardcover sketchbook, which was interesting to see. I'm so used to Strathmore with the paper cover, so that was a bit different. It's not necessarily a positive or a negative, but it depends on your needs. It can be nice for keeping pages flat and protected, but it can also be difficult for quickly and easily opening the sketchbook, so it's kind of a personal preference thing. It's a 5.5 by 8.5 inch sketchbook. It comes with 100 pages and is 68 pounds, which is 8 pounds heavier than Strathmore's 60 pounds, so it was kind of interesting that it was slightly heavier paper. This particular set comes with 3 sketchbooks, so it's a pretty good deal. It's less than $5 a sketchbook. On their website, it's listed for $13.99. So like I like to do with new paper and new sketchbooks is my test of various art supplies. I really like to start with graphite since, given past experiences, graphite seems to be the thing that really tells you whether or not the paper is good quality. Obviously, my paper experience is limited, but this is kind of where I sort of base my initial experiences and opinions on, is my graphite test. So I tried pressing different amounts of pressure, really hard, really soft. I tried just some quick blending, and then I tried erasing. It erased pretty well, except for when I pressed really hard when there was some residue left over, which I'm still really shocked that the marker paper I reviewed, link in the description if you want to check it out, that one was amazing with graphite and its marker paper. But for the most part, all the mediums I tested, which was a bunch of different pens, Crayola marker, Copic marker, I also did an Artist Loft marker. I tried to grab as many things as I could, but it all seemed to work pretty well. I would say this is a pretty darn good sketchbook. The bleed for alcohol is pretty much the same as Strathmore. The only differences I really noticed from what I can recall from Strathmore is that there's a bit more of a grip on this paper than Strathmore's paper. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something to keep in mind. So if you're really used to one paper and then you're trying out this paper, it's just going to be a little bit different. So definitely play around and experiment first before you do any serious drawings. But yeah, for the most part, for me, this was a really nice sketchbook. I'm not really in love with the hardcover. I feel like while I was using it and just carrying it around, it was nice for keeping the sketchbook closed. I'm kind of someone who likes to quickly flip open a sketchbook, so it was a little bit more of a hassle to get the book open with the hardcover. But maybe for you that works out, in which case then I would recommend the sketchbook, since I would say it's pretty on par with Strathmore and it's heavier paper. Moving on to the colored pencils, just a really quick, very important disclaimer is that I am not a colored pencil artist. My experience with colored pencils is very limited. I've only ever really used Crayola and Prismacolor, so this is kind of my first experience with a different brand. So you can take these opinions with a grain of salt, and if you'd really like to experiment with these pencils, there's a link in the description to their website. So again, going from first impressions, opening it up, I noticed the initial rainbow of colors, and upon trying to get out the pencils is where I noticed an issue. It's not exactly the best way of storing these pencils. It was a bit difficult to get them out of the tin. Part of it is due to the fact that I have long fingernails, so I couldn't really get my fingers in there to grip. So I wasn't really a big fan of that. And for the most part, I just kept them out of the tin so I wouldn't have to deal with putting them back in and then trying to take them out again. There's also no interlocking with the plastic that holds the pencils, so if you stack them on top of each other outside the tin, they just slide around. There's nothing to hold them in place. Not really a negative, but it was just something I thought maybe somebody would want to know. I was also a bit worried that there was just a bunch of duplicates because of the way that it was ordered. Each one was a rainbow order. This isn't exactly a fault to this company because when I bought Prismacolors years ago, they did the exact same thing. This is just kind of a general criticism to all colored pencil brands. Please just order them in rainbow order and don't just do some sort of random or inconsequential order just saves us time and organization and everything. And of course, after I organized it all in rainbow order, I turned the tin over and there was a rainbow order already made for me that I could have used, but you know, that's my life. The other thing I noticed was that they were pre-sharpened, which is a big deal because when I bought Prismacolors all those years ago, they were not sharpened. So that was a pain in my butt. So I really appreciate the fact that these come pre-sharpened. They're not sharpened to a point, they're sharpened to a blunt, but they're still sharpened, so I still appreciate it. So after organizing them in my quick rainbow order, I went ahead and color swatched them in the sketchbook. Most of the colors were really nice to use. They felt pretty soft and creamy, although as I went on, I kind of noticed that the lighter colors were a bit harder to work with, so there's a bit of inconsistency. They were a bit more difficult to use and blend with than the softer color, or the darker colors, which were softer. The cores looked really thick, and the pencil itself was very nice to hold compared to Prismacolor. It actually feels like worth money. Prismacolor to me just feels really cheap. It kind of reminds me a lot of Crayola, so this one kind of feels like you're getting an art supply. I forgot to mention that this was the 72 set, and it's listed as just about $30 for the set, so that's less than 50 cents per pencil. They're wax-based, and I also can't remember if I clarified, but there are no repeats. These are all unique individual colors. I tested out some blending as well, and I thought it was pretty good. Again, I'm super inexperienced at colored pencils, so I probably did a bunch of things wrong, but it seemed to go pretty well on par from what I remember of Prismacolor. I tested burnishing just a little bit because I'm not an artist who likes to burnish. I have a lot of issues with burnishing, but I tested that out, and that I'm not sure if it's the paper because I used the sketchbook, but it seemed really nice and better than Prismacolor's burnishing. They have a light fastness system, at least I'm assuming that's what it is, on the pencils with the little pluses. They range from 1 to 3, and I think that's out of 5 if I remember light fastness well enough. Though I wish these colored pencils came with some sort of packet just to kind of maybe explain some quick tips and the light fastness system and that sort of stuff. There wasn't any information really. I do want to mention that it does react to alcohol differently than Prismacolor, so if you're used to using alcohol to help blend your colored pencils with Prismacolor, then just keep that in mind and really test it out, because all of my tests kind of ended up a bit different, and in some of them the colors were just basically dissolved from the alcohol. As I was swatching these down, I did notice quite a common inconsistency, which was the colors of the barrel and the actual color of the colored pencil. I know it's not always easy to match those two up, but for this particular set, it really seemed like quite a few colors were off. It was actually kind of frustrating as I was trying to organize these colored pencils. I kept having to look at the leads because the barrels were almost essentially unreliable. So if you do end up getting this set, I would definitely recommend color swatching. And just a bit of a random note, but they do have a numbering system, which is what I wrote next to the colors as I was swatching them, just out of curiosity to see if I could find a pattern. And it was seemingly random. I don't understand their numbering system at all, so it might just be easier to go off the color names instead. There were a lot of greens though, so if you're someone who likes to use greens, then this is a nice set. For the most part, the colors seem pretty balanced aside from that, but I do kind of wish there was a colorless blender in here. Again, I'm not a fan of burnishing, but the colorless blender does kind of help with some blending, so it would have been nice if maybe one of the greens could have been replaced with perhaps another brown, because there's mostly just dark browns, or a colorless blender. Of course, you can always buy colorless blenders separately. Prismacolors I've used in the past, and it's not that bad. Another downside, which is kind of a big downside, is that they don't offer individual pencils for sale. So if you run out of a color that you really like, you're essentially having to re-buy the entire set just to get it. So again, to compare this with Prismacolor, because that's pretty much the only other pencil I've used, the prices are pretty similar. Prismacolor is just a bit cheaper on Amazon, so it could be worth comparing. Although I'm really not a big fan of Prismacolor. I actually really don't like their colored pencils. They constantly break, and they're just a hassle to deal with. Although I didn't sharpen these pencils, I didn't end up needing to yet. They did feel sturdier, and the core being thicker kind of gives me some hope that they won't be as bad as Prismacolor. So price-wise and the pencil quality-wise, it seems more worth it than Prismacolor, at least from what I can tell right now. So wanting to get a little bit more experience with these colored pencils, I went ahead and just printed out one of my coloring book pages, which, hey, if you're interested, link in the description to check it out, and just went ahead and colored that. I know colored pencil artists are probably cringing on how I'm coloring. I am sorry, I'm doing my best. I also have wrist issues, so I couldn't really go for that long. But for the most part, they seemed pretty nice. My only real issue with it was just the lighter colors didn't really seem to lay down as well as the darker colors. And I also had to keep referring back to my swatch because I couldn't rely on the barrel colors. But really those were the biggest drawbacks for me, aside from the fact that I just, in general, am not a big fan of colored pencil. It's too slow for me. I'm looking forward to trying out their sketchbook more. I've only done a couple pages so far, and thus far it's been pretty nice. So I'm looking forward to experimenting some more with it. So that's pretty much it for the review. Here is the final colored pencil drawing. It's not that dark. My wrist started hurting after a while, so this is just kind of it. This is as far as it goes. Now, if you'd like to get these supplies for yourself or any other Arteza supplies, I'll have a link in the description down below to their website. And shameless self-promotion, but if you did like this drawing and you would like to color it yourself, you can get it in my coloring book. I have a bunch of sea creatures to color as well as a bunch of tutorials in the back. You can get it as ebook or paperback, and the link to both will be in the description down below. So if you guys have tried these products, feel free to let me know what you thought about them down below. And if there's any other products you guys would like to see me review, let me know down there as well. Hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!